Welcome to Launch Code with Mike and Paul, two industry veterans who will take you on their exciting adventure building their software company from the ground up. Get ready for cutting-edge tech insights, candid stories, and a whole lot of fun along the way. Welcome to their amazing adventure. Welcome to Launch Code.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Launch Code with Mike and Paul. My name is Paul Schneider. With me is my good friend, Mike Dillon. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a fine Friday. The weather's starting to cool down, and my favorite holidays at the end of the month. So excited to be here.
Love it. Yeah, well, I'm in Phoenix. We're still over 100. So I'm hoping for one of those cooler days here sometime soon. So we'll see. But we are back with another technology episode, and we're focusing on artificial intelligence in higher education. And we have one of really the leading thought leaders out there and disruptors in the industry, Matt Alex, who is the founder of Beyond Academics. Matt and Beyond have been engaging CIOs and executives across the country on AI strategy, its challenges, its use cases, and developing AI roadmaps. And Matt is well known in the industry for his fierce commitment to institutional success. He challenges norms, he helps leaders think outside of the box, and plan for new paradigms. And the core of his mission is to impact student success and improve institutional effectiveness. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mike. So that introduction, I'll tell you, was way above me, right? So I think the only thing you got is that I'm a disruptor. So hopefully I won't disrupt too much on the conversation. But, when we think about AI, Mike and I come from the ERP SIS world, right? So that was innovation. What's in front of us is going to be like game changing because we went from a manual process to digitization of that manual process, but we're now at a stage where we will start to reimagine the operations of how we actually serve and how students will be engaged. But not only students, how does faculty and staff also benefit from this? And in the long run, industry will benefit from what we're doing inside of higher ed. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, you are clearly passionate about this. And that leads into, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your journey and the mission of Beyond Academics.
Yeah. So, I've been in the market, 30 plus years, 20, 25 of those. I've been running a consulting group. I ran a very boutique consulting group that got acquired by Deloitte, became a partner at Deloitte, helped them, build out their higher ed practice, ran their student group, put in all these different systems from Oracle to Ellucian to Workday. A lot of that was a part of my journey. So I come from a very systematic way, but my days started years ago as a clerk at a university. So when I walk into the door and I'm actually talking to clients, I get to the level of what impacts people at the front. And that is why this conversation is really important, because we're now moving from requirement gathering to what I call workflows. And workflows is why AI is going to become more predominant. And so when we think about what I did in my journey, I was just automating and digitizing what we've always done. And that's been my journey. And I, of course, know all the gatekeeping, the protocols, all the things that are, as President Bull said to me yesterday, there's a lot of load-bearing walls that are in place that we have to work around. Even with AI, we have to work around it. And I think it's going to be an interesting time for us. And so my journey, went through that where I built an SIS practice twice technically. But I left to build something that I really thought was really important, and that was to make impact around innovation. I wear a future of work lens. I think about design thinking. And I'm not looking to reimagine what you always done. I'm trying to reimagine what you can do. And that is what's really exciting. Now, remember, 4 years ago when I started Beyond, we weren't talking about AI, but I knew that there was innovation that had to be done, whether that was going to be done in the cloud, whether that was going to be done in using auxiliary systems, and I call an SOS, a system of systems architecture. I knew that change had to happen And it couldn't just be us putting an SIS in or an HR system in or a finance system. All are necessary, not against it. But man, the impact we can make if we were to think in a design thinking model where students become the center of what we're thinking about is a big driver in what I do. And so Beyond is built on what I call a 4.0 consulting model, where we are really thinking about reinventing how we consult. Our clients see it, they understand it. I think we're starting to socialize it in market. So of course, follow me on LinkedIn and stuff, and you'll start to see what 4.0 is and what 1.0 is. And I think there's a clear different way of thinking. And I think the fact that we're using AI in everything we do just comes right into the concept of 4.0.
Yeah, it's interesting. My career started similarly as a clerk, and this was in summer sessions, and then eventually managing summer sessions, both at UCLA and at Berkeley. And interestingly enough, because it's a smaller population, we were always the pilot for any new systems that were going to impact students. So I got good at implementing students. No idea that I would go from there to helping develop campus solutions, and then being in the consulting arena. I always thought I would be in higher ed forever, and in a way I have been. But one of the things that you mentioned, and the impact of AI, it's going to be across the board, right? And taking the sort of a blank slate and saying, okay, we now have this technology. How would we redo the way that we administer services? And I know you've seen and talked to a lot of people in the industry. And there's been a lot of talk about AI and discussion on use cases, but I think you're at the forefront where you're really seeing some transformational use cases. And so I'd love for you, to talk about some of the transformational use cases, and then also where should an institution start, right? Because it's just this huge ubiquitous technology that actually encompasses multiple technologies, but where's the best place for an institution to start dipping their toe into AI?
Yeah. So let me just talk about the first piece about AI and how it is coming into market, right? There's a lot of AI by name. And what I mean by that is everyone and their mother says they have AI in their system. And they use it. But the reality of it is, are they really using AI? Or are they just using really savvy code that they are saying it's AI, right? AI is going to be really driven by patterns. It's going to be driven by GPTs and the content of how those data is being put together. So I want to make sure people realize we're real early. So when people say, "Oh, we got AI," that's great that they have AI, but you have to step back and say, all right, of what they're saying, they're probably 20% right. So we got to make sure we understand where the 80% is going to go, and we got to be prepared for that. And so how do schools prepare for that? There's two angles on this, Mike, and it depends on where you sit on a campus. There's a tech side, and then there is a functional side. Two different places, but you got to come together when we think about it. So when I'm having my conversations with my clients about AI, and also we're building AI technologies too with a pretty major vendor in terms of how do we use it, right? So the first thing we got to figure out is, what does AI do, right? And so we're so used to what we've always heard, a predictive models and things like that come through what I would call a smart coding concept. But we have to start to recognize that everything is going to be built on, let me just talk you through the technical element of it, because that's what needs to get done, is going to be built on what we call GPTs, or small containers of data that is infrastructure. So what does that mean? It means that technology has to bring different data sources into a place. And you're going to build what we call sub-agents that manage that data. Just like if you were a financial aid person, you knew everything about financial aid. If you were an admissions person, you knew everything. You got to build GPTs based on personas, and those GPTs are going to be the expert. Now, when does those GPTs get interacting is going to be the journey of that student, the journey of that faculty, journey of that staff member. When we think about that infrastructure, we got to think about the data strategy of cleaning the data, putting in the data in the right places, And then you got to think about the system of systems architecture that needs to play. So when you think about AI, it isn't just like, oh, let's turn on a switch and AI is going to work, because that may work for that one product that you're using. But hey, if you're only going to do it for one switch on your campus, you're failing the strategy element. So I would tell a school, hey, let's build a strategy that allows for a system of systems architecture, building it. And it is still early, Mike. So what we have to do a little bit extra work in preparing those technologies to work effectively. And then we're doing that. I'll give you an example of it in a little bit. So that's the first piece. There's this whole element of it. The other element is the functional side. And we can apply AI for anything we want. Oh, we're going to do AI. But really, you got to think about your outcomes first. And what does the capabilities of those outcomes, what do you need in order to get those outcomes? What are the capabilities of that? And those capabilities are going to be within workflows. And within those workflows is where you will see the DNA of AI come into play. And inside of that DNA of that AI, you will be able to say, okay, I'm going to be able to, with this AI, synthesize information. I'm going to be able to analyze. I'm going to be able to brainstorm. I'm going to be able to create frameworks of strategy. I'm going to build frameworks of timelines. I'm going to be able to build technology logic, right? So if you look at what I just did, is I built it this way, and then the frameworks tie into that whole ChatGPT building of the LLMs, the RAGs, all the tech stuff that the functional people don't need to know, but they need to know that it's an important thing. And if you don't do it well, and if you just say, oh, I'm going to buy a product and turn it on and we're going to be AI, yeah, what happened to our CRM world is going to happen to your AI world. You're going to have dispersed CRMs not talking to each other, and everyone spending money on it and no one actually coming together. We shouldn't do that. And that's the first thing I'm going to tell people, is that you need to have a university or a college strategy first. And that's a big part. And you can see it in the players in market. I can name you some schools that ASU built on strategy. Kyle and Elizabeth are building strategy. They're having conversations with the right people. MDC for Miami-Dade with Robert and Tonya, they're thinking about collaboration with different product lines. So if you notice it comes from President Crow, President Pumarega, that are saying, hey, build the strategy, build the collaboration. And then, of course, President Lambert at Maryville is saying, hey, how do we execute and adopt it? They put in soul machines and things like that. So you'll start to see how people are adopting, but strategy, collaboration, and adoption is going to be a really critical player based on what I just told you in terms of the functional and technical strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you almost need to think about we only know so much because we don't know where AI is going to go. So at least the framework with how you're going to use it at a strategy and a policy level. So Paul and I met with a major university, and they were engaging in a AI project, and we were dealing with like sort of director level, just under the CIO. And we asked, have you gotten approval? Do you have a strategy, a policy document about how you're going to implement? What's the ethics involved here? An enterprise-wide framework before you go off and start developing solutions, because in particular, in this case, they were going to deal with faculty. And we thought, you need
oh my God,
in this.
Yeah.
You cannot do this in a vacuum. So I 100% agree with let's start with.
And if you look at the three schools that I named presidents.
Yeah.
Right. They're thoughtful, they're strategic, and they delegate out, right? That's the number one thing. Like it has to be delegated out with some strategy. They bring the right people in-house to do it. And you also have to listen. You got to be able to know that you may fail in certain places. That's part of the AI journey. Like we're doing some use cases, and we ran a few use cases, and it failed. It failed miserably. It didn't do what we expected it to do. But it didn't fail in the fact that we learned that, okay, you know what? We forgot to train it to do that. So then we went back and retrained it to do the steps that we just forgot, because as humans, we just do it. But the training of it is as important of it. But now you still have to figure out the outcome. What are you trying to achieve? And then how do you train it? What data sources are you giving it? What prompts? The prompt engineering or prompt communication, that iteration is so important in those sub agents that I talk about, because the financial aid sub agent, think about the number of documents and things that they have to go through to package a package, right? Well, to be honest with you, you could do it. You got to build the training sub agent to do it. And those are kind of work that we're kind of doing in the thought of AI right now as we build out, capabilities in a product line.
Yeah, and you hit on that key point of learning as you do it. But and we were talking to Michael Fassett, who's the founder and president of Orion Research, which does AI work, and he was saying, the thing not to do is not to do anything. You need to start learning the technology, learning by experience. You can find areas where you have high impact but low risk. Look for those areas. So it was sort of fascinating just to learn. And your point was, we don't know where it's going. And I made a comment to him. I said, well, it's amazing because he publishes all these papers. I said, it's changing dramatically from month to month. He goes, month to month, it's changing dramatically week to week.
Yeah.
So get it, at least start experiencing it. So you mentioned use cases. Do you want to elaborate on a couple that you think are really impactful and maybe ones where it is, hits a wide spectrum of people, stakeholders, but it's a low risk effort?
Yeah. And I'll give you one that we're kind of building out. The admissions process has always been pretty cumbersome. You have 60 questions, and there's, every question that you can imagine is sitting on a form somewhere. And then they wonder why students don't fill it out, right? So, and we've built out some dynamic admissions flows before, but we're now building it with the logic of AI and framing it through what we call branches of information, because the way Paul applies and responds to a question and what he wants to do is going to be different than you, Mike, right? Or it's going to be different than myself or my kids.
I just want to do what Paul does. That's all.
Yeah. So part of the element of a new admissions kind of model is being able to personalize it as much as possible. But the key here is we're now going to be able to use AI to interact with that student while he or she is going through that process, to ask certain questions or even pull existing data to say, hey, this is what I see. Is this what you're thinking about doing? Is this what because remember I told you about all the data sources? Higher ed is probably the one that has the most data sources than any. If industry would have as much data on a constituent, they would be thriving. They don't have it. Think about, we get Common App, we get high school records, we get, how they interact on a parking lot. Like, higher ed is navigating with data.
Yeah.
But because humans mine that data, we don't see anything. So, we have all these at-risk products. Come on. Those at-risk products are basically coded, flags that somebody 20 years ago or 10 years ago said that was a factor because they saw some data from some trend or something. We're still doing at risk in an old model. And what I'm saying is, let's start finding the patterns with that data source. So, Mike, you're absolutely right. We're building this right now. We're building this. It'll kind of get announced in January. We're building this in like less than 5 months, right? Now, how we bring that out to market and how we add on to it. And you're absolutely right. We don't know what 5 months is going to do, but we will have a strategy, because you know why we're driven by, Mike? We're driven by the outcome of that admissions application. So we're using AI to personalize the path of a student going through it, but also allowing that AI to pull data from course sequence guides, from course catalogs, from financial aid and financial data, and be able to then, and also and constraints. Like those students have constraints. They can't come on a Tuesday. They can't come on a Friday, right? They have constraints. We need to also incorporate that. Allowing that admissions process and the enrollment process to allow that student to interact with a AI type of, we call it a digital intelligence platform that allows for that information to be presented, and then let a human, because the way we have to do this is there's still hallucination in some of these things. We need advisors to still be advisors, but they're guided in a certain way. They can adjust, and based on that adjustment, who learns that? That machine learning adjustment learns because the advisor says, no, we're going to advise a student this way because you hallucinated here, but this was right? And we're going to train. So there's this feedback loop that we've always had in Amazon and Uber, and that has kind of told us what we should buy, when we should buy. Well, we're going to have that in AI in the way that we interact with people and students, because we're going to start saying that feedback is bad. Hence, the training of that model is going to be better. And that's going to be a big piece. So you're going to see an admissions element that comes through. We're going to see dashboards that are much more personalized based on that. You will see academic pathways being created, allowing for it. And then, you know what else is going to do, Mike? It's going to bridge all the places that the SISs have gaps right now. And that's okay. It's okay that the gaps are there, because the SISs do too much right now anyways. We're going to start to see AI start to fill the gaps of things that the SIS was never meant to do. SIS isn't a system of engagement, and it's not a system of experience. So let's not sell the products that way. Let's start putting layers of it, and let's start using the SIS with the engines of the financial aid and the records and missions and financials, and let's start to let the AI do its work. Because in the old days, I would configure the prereqs. But today, in the systems that we're kind of working in, prereqs are actually being read straight from the catalog, and then validating a transcript. So think about that. So I don't need a consultant to design inside the SIS, because I'm going to allow that student to say, you shouldn't take that course. But that student maybe will take that course because he or she may have had some historical experience in employees as an employer experience somewhere, right? There's ways of prereqs that are different, but in the old days, we looked at it as course to course. But how about experience? Why can't that student come in and take it,
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know we kind of focused a bit on the administrative side and the student experience side, but when we get over into the academic side, there's a whole another set of AI and augmented reality and other things that can happen. And one of the things that interests me on the academic side, and I want to hear what your thoughts are, is assessments, because inherently assessments are they're biased because it's the person that had built them that may ask a question in a way that a student may receive it and not hear it the same way. So some of the cool stuff in AI is, hey, we asked this question this way, the student answered it the wrong way. I'm going to rephrase it and ask it a different way to get at the core to find out if the student really understood it. And if they answer that correct, then yeah, we move on, but we give them credit for that particular question and that subject matter that they know. And then it keeps doing that, right? So really cool ways to really understand the competence of a student on a particular subject. But going back to some of the stuff you were talking about and some of the things you've seen on the academic side, where are you seeing AI potentially play?
Yeah. So the undercurrent is fear, right? The undercurrent is fear everywhere, right? And everyone's afraid of people cheating, and everyone's afraid of, some student taking advantage of it. And, we had in admissions and all that kind of stuff, like, hey, there's a fear of how people get into schools and so forth. But if you think about it, it's inherently in everything that higher ed does, right? So when I talk to clients about AI, And they talk about the first thing as well, students are going to cheat. That's the first dialogue. And I say, you don't have a cheating problem. You have a problem that your students don't value learning. So they're choosing to cheat to get a grade because you made them think the grade was more important than learning. So competency, and you made the comment there, Mike, competency is the first thing that educators have to realize. Hey, if we could start to navigate around competency, learning outcomes. And so if you read a few of my articles, I talk about credentials and so forth, right? And we still operate in a 1.0 version of credentials right now. We got to move it to a 4.0 version where it has a lot of the interactions. But competency is going to be driven. So we got to move from a earn it model to a learn it model in the learning side, because we now earn a grade, we earn a GPA, we earn hours, we earn a degree. We have a lot of earning that we're trying to do, but we don't ever quantify what we've learned. So the competency element and the assessment of that competency, Mike, is really important. And the reality of it is GPTs actually can tell us if this person really knows better than the exams that we have written. Now, to be honest with you, you put in content in a GPT, it'll give you the questions that you need for a test. You don't even need to write the test anymore, right? So it comes in this world of like, and you still need a human to make sure it's not hallucinating, it has the right thing. But the concept of that is really important. So competency is going to be driven by the assessment element. But I think learning where we're really going to gain here, and we did this exercise. We took one of our research papers. So, and it's probably one of our more famous papers that we put out, and we put it into an AI, and it built us a podcast on that research paper. And I'll share it with you. I'll share it with the audience if you want. When you listen to it, it sounds like us just having a conversation. Two people talking about a research paper I wrote with my stats, my facts, everything else. And it's going back and forth. It's these two AI bots talking to each other, but it sounds like just like us. At some point I was telling Joe, hey, Joe, I don't think I just need to do this. I just need to tell them what I need to say, and this bots are going to do it for us, right? It's that smart. So the fact that it's there, it's kind of scary. But what it does is it allows for the user to absorb information differently. Because you know what? I learn off of a podcast. Because if I had to sit and read my damn research paper, myself, I'd get kind of bored with it, right? But I actually listened to it on my car. And the greatest thing about it, Mike, it had examples that wasn't mine. It was something that they said, it's like this. And I was like, oh my God, it's true. It's exactly like that. It gave us a little bit different. Now, we haven't figured out how to edit it yet, but that's our next wave of iteration. But what I told my team was, hey, why couldn't we make this for students so that they could learn a topic that is mundane and boring? Hey, create the comic strip version of this research paper. Hey, give me the Cliff Note version of it. So what I just did there, Mike, is I disseminating knowledge, my knowledge, which I'm like, okay, disseminate it in whatever way you need to learn, go ahead and learn. And that is a big part of how we will see learning change. Now, the traditionals will say, that's not the way you should learn. And I'm like, you know what? Give people choices and we'll see which ones they're going to take. Are you going to go to the class that gives you 3 versions of that content? Or are you going to go with the lecture and let's sit in the classroom? And if people all sit on the lecture and that's what they learn, great. But hey, if I can learn the other way and I learn competency. And so so think about that podcast. After that podcast, I could give that student an assessment.
Yeah.
And tell me, did you understand this, this, and this? And if it missed it, it can say what part of the podcast you should reread. Like, think about that concept. So it's assessment, competency, it's aligning personalization of learning, the learning chemistries, is going to be, we're pouring gasoline on knowledge. And knowledge isn't just the actual content anymore. Knowledge is applying that knowledge to something. So the fact that podcast, and I'll share it after this. When you guys post this, I'll share the link, and you guys will be like, oh my God, this is crazy. And it's no humans. Okay, so that's the thing. I think it's pouring the gasoline on knowledge and allowing people to absorb it the way they need. We're so early, and look how cool it is. It's almost like I used to walk around with my HTML page when I had the internet. Hey, look at my page. I have a guy blinking his eye. Like, that was cool at that time. Well, this is rock star cool in the things that we're doing in AI. And I think that's what I think people need to realize. I always tell my competition, don't do it. Like, don't do any of this. Yeah, AI doesn't work. It does. Yeah, I'm like, you know what? People, let them all think that. Because, Mike, people like us, we know exactly, and we're getting a little floor burns. We're learning how to not do something. But man, we're going to be ahead of the game because we're actually trying things that no one's actually trying.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're talking, for those institutions that are out there that are truly trying and maybe getting the rug burns here or there. I mean,
yeah,
certainly tons of awesome things that are going to, be ushered in because of AI. And then there's some people that we talk to that are concerned about certain pitfalls that come along with AI, one being bias. So, how should institutions think of and prepare for AI to make sure they're going to get the outcomes they ultimately are looking for?
Yeah. So bias, it's ironic that higher ed talks about bias inside of AI. Our admissions process is flawed because it's bias. It's sorry to say, admissions people, elite Ivies, top state schools, admissions processes have bias in it all over the place. I know that California just did the legacy, admits aren't that way they're approaching it, but there is some bias there, right? So, and the reason that we are concerned about it is there is outcomes of a degree that get you a job, right? And so when you have bias and you're not letting everyone in equally, then there is some bias there. So admissions itself, there's bias. There is bias in grading. The lecture of a student in one classroom and a lecture in another classroom with a different student, same topics, different professors. A B is not a B, a is not an A equally to each of these students. It's unfortunate, it's bias. So no one's addressing that, like, oh my God, bias. Well, first of all, you have to define what bias is. And you have to, if you're going to change an AI and you want AI to do it well for you, well, you better recognize you have to change bias in the inherent systemic issues of higher ed today. And that's the first thing we have to think about is, okay, I would say to you, we got to apply human common sense to anything that AI gives us. So, when I told you that we're playing around with technology and the first iteration was hallucinating, well, a human had to take that common sense and say, that doesn't make sense, right? So why can't we apply that to bias? Why can't we apply it to bias? Why can't a human do it? And the reason we can't do that right now is humans themselves are biased. They don't understand what that means to let a student who comes from a disadvantaged part of the world, why they should get a chance at your elite university. Because they didn't score high enough in the SAT. They didn't get the grade because they were in a lecture with a person that got a B, like that graded harder. Like, there's so many biases here. So one is we got to figure that. Define what bias is the first thing I would tell you. And then maybe use bots to determine what bias is, what factors of bias is there. The reason that we're all hearing bias and the ethical of AI, it's that fear factor. Just like I had fear when I said to my people, we should accept facts when we're getting a withdrawal. Like, no, they need to come into campus and withdraw. Like, no. A fact, like there was fear. And financial aid won't accept that. Well, I said, why don't we get financial aid? Like, there's bias and there's things that we are always just used to doing because we're humans. We adopt the same things we've ever done. So on bias and the ethical AI concept, first you got to define it. You got to define it for what it means to your institution. And if you're going to fix it for AI, fix it for everything you do in a higher ed. Because you can't just say, I'm going to do it for AI and I'm not going to let AI come in because I believe in ethics and AI and ethics and bias in AI, but I don't believe it in my admission standards. I don't believe it in the way that I grade. I don't believe it in the fact that I don't give a certain person extra time to do something. Like there's all these things that I think we just got to get to. Common sense of humans should play a role. We should never let bots just be on its own and go. At least for the time being, we should not let it happen, right? We need humans to be humans putting a common sense. And while humans are doing it, hopefully they're learning what real bias is. I hope they're learning what real ethics is. You know, people get hired because somebody knew somebody. Is that ethical? Come on.
Yeah.
Yep, totally. Well, and that could be a podcast in and of itself, that whole discussion right there. But you had mentioned ethical AI. And when we were talking to higher ed institutions, that's always thrown about. But how do you define ethical AI, and how are you seeing it being used appropriately, or maybe even, at all out there right now with the organizations you're working with?
It's not an easy answer to tell you. I can't be like, oh, we do it. Like I said, we're applying common sense to the interactions and the iterations of our designs, right? And so some of it is we have to go back and retrain it to look at data differently. See, I also think ethics and bias is because when humans are kind of navigating it, they're only built on what they know and what they're familiar with or what they have gone through, right? Their container of understanding is only what they know. The containers of what we're building is going to be larger than that. So we're going to need to try to look at that. And I think there is a training element, Paul, that us as humans have to be retrained on what bias really is. And that is coming through when a system is giving it to us. We have to then say, is that really fair for this type of student? Is it fair for this person? And we have to maybe say that in that prompt to that sub agent. Hey, can you make sure that we're fair when we're thinking about this disbursement of financial aid? Or hey, we got to go through that exercise a little bit. Like I said to you, we're building a couple innovative products to wrap around some of the things that we know there are gaps. Humans are going to be doing that, but then we're going to apply the things that work really well. But humans still need to then validate it there too, right? Because I can apply that same logic to a school and another school, A and B, but because of the data source and the way that the catalog is written and the way that a catalog is written at another school, we have to validate it. So there is this validation period that I think, Paul, we're going to need to go through. And I think part of that, you probably have to put an ethics kind of strategy there in terms of what information do you need to make sure that we're looking at it right. And ethically, I think are they going to do something wrong with it? I think that's the ethics. I think that's when you think about ethics is, can they do something erroneous on somebody or something? Could they do it? And I think we're going to have to be careful about that because I'll be honest, this thing is a powerful, powerful machine that allows us to do it. Like we have unethical things happening on the internet now. How many people are getting fished to give out information? How many, I mean, we get it all the time in our company where somebody's trying to get us to change our account number to their account number. Like it's happening. There's ethical things that are happening in the internet. We don't stop using the internet, right?
Yeah.
So, but we know those are things that we have to look out for, and we have to build what we build ethically. And I think that's going to be, I'm not sure if anyone has any standards written out and things like that, but I think anyone that's thinking about writing it better have experienced it, better have gone through the ethics elements of how do you build, how do you design, if there's just people talking about ethics and how AI should apply for it, you're not going to design AI ethics because you're not actually using AI to build that ethics concepts. Because the way we iterate, the way that we restrict data, the way that we hash data, the way that we formulate patterns, the way that all those are new concepts that a person that's an expert in ethics won't ever understand.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. One of the things that's that, it's already here, right? You can create a video of a person, or a generation of animation that will,
Sure.
it'll duplicate you. So even when you do the biometrics, right, can it duplicate your eye enough that it'll bypass that? It's not going to bypass necessarily, we don't think, a finger, but it maybe
Yep.
that point. So there's all sorts of, when you say bad bad folks
Actors.
out there doing bad actors out there doing bad things, it's entirely right at the forefront. We're just going to have to always stay ahead of it. There's going to always be some way to better proof ourselves and stay away from that. But
you know where the risk is going to be in AI in terms of where we will see the most? It's going to be in cybersecurity, because cybersecurity right now is built on humans navigating attacks, right? AI is going to help do that. That's the first wave of how does AI help cybersecurity. And I'm not even trying to sell cybersecurity. I'm just giving you the concepts of why you think about AI. But the fact that you could use AI to stop an attack, on the other side, they're able to do things with AI in a much different way, right? So it's going to be a war game in there, and we're going to have to figure out. I'm a little bit outside of it. I'm not a cyber expert, but I have talked to my cyber experts and said, hey, what happens if AI is being used to attack the infrastructures? And I think that's where all these new softwares that are coming into play, they better start to think about, how does AI come into play? How do we make this so complicated in terms of access, from a machine learning kind of concept? I think that's going to be a big player, Mike, not only for higher ed, it's going to be for industry. Higher ed is definitely has to be concerned with that. And I would love to watch that on the sideline. It's a little too nerdy for me. I'm more functional than a cyber guy, but it's almost like war games. Like, okay, how is that? And I certainly don't want my data to be breached, right? So I want it to work well, right? So
yeah. Hey, so beyond academics, you guys have done so much work with the higher ed user group. So just wondering to know if there's something you want to mention to the audience about that, and then also any initiatives you have underway that are be worthwhile for everybody to know.
Yeah, our work with the Hug is pretty interesting, right? And when I reached out to them, and Paul was one of the originators, right? So Paul, this is your baby. And so when I walked to them, I don't think they knew that I actually was there in those early days. Mike, you were there in your forum with cyber and others, right? But those days were really, it's what made us who we are, right? It made me the best consultant possible. It built my network. It allowed me to sell my company into a big, larger firm. It allowed me to educate, Oracle University. I used to teach everything at Oracle University. So the Hug was a really important part of who I am. That's the first thing I will say. So, but I also know that the power is in the people of campuses. Like I work with presidents and innovative CIOs, that's where I work. But I know, and I say this to Brittany and Tom as we work with them on strategies and so forth, I'm like, the power is within the group of people who come, because those people influence everything that needs to be done on campus. They may not always have the signing authority, and to be honest with you, and that's totally okay, because those people actually know who's the signing authority, where to go, and they actually know where they're about to go, right? So I want to be best friends with most of them. And I also like them. I was one of them. I was a clerk. I was a registrar. I was one of them. So, and I designed systems and I sat next to them. So as much as those other conferences are great, I wanted to build the best Hug possible for the future, right? So when we did the main stage last year, you saw that it's much different. And so how does that happen? It comes from a consulting firm and beyond that allows us to say, let's brand ourselves different. Let's put the messaging different. Hey, vendors want people all in the same room. And I have a whole article about where they think about us vendors as parasites. I want to write about it because we shouldn't be considered parasites because we are the ones that are supporting that conference, right? And I know it's a harsh comment to be made, but it's a true statement. Stop thinking of us as parasites. We're here to give you strategy. We're willing to give you everything. Like Mike, you would, if someone called you, you would help them, right? It's that simple. But when they put us into that group, and that's what I told Brittany and Tom, like, I want to be a partner in your journey. I want to build your products better. I want people to come there. So now they talk about AI, they talk about all those kind of things. So I said, hey, you need to build a strategy around people and what they need to do. Sure. Do you need to do the SIS as ERP? Sure, because that's what your people are built on. And so I think it's an exciting time. We're going to help them do New Orleans again this year. We're going to do main stage. We're going to have conversations around AI, of course, anything around the cloud product line, and I think what I want to say to people is, Beyond is committed for higher ed. We believe in higher ed, and that's why we believe in the hug. I believe in we do Herdy, we do that conference and what we believe in. So Beyond is built on anything that's going to make higher ed more effective. So of course it's our client, but then Hug is helping clients, and so is Herdy, and we want to build that. And inside of our firm, we have a brand and marketing agency, and those are how we were built, because I knew messaging had to be the most important piece of what we did in the next 4 years. And we punch above our weight. Like, we punch much stronger because our voice is out there, and I don't hold back, and so that helps a little bit. But I think people that know me, they'll be like, he actually cares. And that's probably the thing that I think most people get out of it is, while he may be a little bit harsh on us, I'm just setting the uncomfortable conversations that we all need to have so that we use AI more effectively, that we put in systems like SIS clouds more effectively. I want everyone to be successful. I want clients to be successful. So.
Yeah, I think really important to note that we're a part of the community. We've been in the community. We may not have spent our entire career at an institution, but we've been at institutions, and the fact that we have a perspective of seeing many institutions and how they operate, you understand how any particular institution could be more effective, right?
And one thing I want to also say is, they're not wrong. There are some vendors that are totally parasites that are just asking you for a meeting to sell a license. They don't even know what you're doing, right? So my advice to these folks are, talk to the people that have conversations beyond the license sale. Like, invite them in, have a cup of coffee. You will know who's there to sell you a license and who's going to be there 5 years from now, even when there isn't a license sale. People come to us and there's no license sale, there's no consulting sale for us, but eventually there's things that come in, right? And so my article will come out. It's already written, but it's really to push on the attendees of these conferences to really value the vendors, because I think but us as vendors, we have to also humanize these people as not licensed salespeople either. Like, oh, that's who I got to sell license to. I think it's two fronts that we have to tackle, Mike. But it's an exciting time, and I think we're doing a good job in building the relationships with the right people, and I think you'll start to see a lot of traction.
So, kind of related to that, Matt, what's the best way that professionals listening to this podcast can get engaged with you? Is it, via the website? Do you want to hear a problem statement first and say, or are you just open to a general conversation?
Yeah, we're probably one of the most accessible consulting firms around. We're in people's faces all day. We have Mondays with Matt, Fridays with Freddie. We have think spaces that we run with the Hug. We have Subject Matter 101, right? So we're building programming that gives you thought leadership. We're just telling you what is. And if you'll notice, we never sell beyond. It's not part of our DNA, because not everyone wants to buy beyond. Like, you know what? Hey, Mike, if they work better with you, I'm great. Go work better with you. I have no problem with that. But if they're going and changing the ecosystem, I'm totally for it. So of course, follow us on LinkedIn, at beyondacademics.com. Just find us. Follow me. I'm all over the place in there. That's probably the the best way to get a hold of us. You'll find us at any point in time there. And I think, Joe Abraham, and you'll see others, Freddie, we're all very relatable, and a conversation is I always tell my team, the question isn't what Beyond does. The most important question is, what is it that you all are doing? Because based on that, that's where Beyond wraps around it. Like, we're writing a book for a president. We are doing a new portal for a school. We are putting in Workday at a client. We're helping Ellucian clients optimize. Like, it all varies, and it's all strategic based on the need of that client. So, of course, are we doing AI? Yeah. Where a vendor asked us to come in and help them think through this, we stepped in. So the answer always isn't what we do, because we have experts who do a lot of things, and then we're experts in not doing some things, and we will give you the best recommendation. But the question is, what is it you're doing? Where are you going? Where do you want to be? And that's where we will wrap around you. And it may mean that we may help you, or we will guide you to the right places to get you there. And that's going to be the driver in most of our conversations.
Yep. Yeah. True sense of community. True sense.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Matt, this has been a fantastic conversation. You're kind of one of the OGs from this whole market and this higher ed community, and it's great to see you not only be successful as you've done in the past, but continue to be successful and continue to do some of those things that are thought-provoking and leading edge and really helping the institutions that are out there. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you for sharing this with us. And thank you, everybody who is listening to this podcast. We appreciate your listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.
You have been listening to Launch Code with Mike and Paul. You can find all episodes on your favorite podcast services and on our website at elastiforce.com. In addition, if you have software development or Oracle or PeopleSoft managed service needs, visit us at elastiforce.com and let's see how we can help.